Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host. My name is Stunning Steve Barber. Joining me is my co-host, as always, the intellectual rock star himself, Delicious Dwaylen Davis.
Hey, everybody.
And he's sporting if you see us on YouTube, you already know he's sporting the Cody, the American Nightmare shirt. I've got the Wildcat Chris Harris shirt, so
Yep.
now I'm kind of wondering who would win in a fight between them two. Because I'd like to see that match.
That'd be a good
So,
match. Yeah.
and since we actually know Chris, we know Wildcat. We can actually talk to him and say, hey,
Yeah.
what's the odds of you and Cody, getting in the ring and, mixing it up. So, but this has been an interesting week as far as news goes, because I know we just did the review of Crown Jewel, but then, there's been some news, there's some things like last week. Was it last week? No, 2 weeks ago, we had Big Strong Matthew Mims on the show.
Yep.
NWA World Television Champ. And like I said, hey, right now he is the best TV champ. You know why? Because he's the one with the belt.
Exactly. Yep.
And he liked that logic. And I'm like, oh my God, I just impressed somebody whose brain is like bigger than everybody's, because
And Samoa Joe has relinquished the Ring of Honor World Television title. So Mims is even, Mims is even in,
that. Ooh. So,
yeah.
yep. So, but one of the things we talked to Big Strong Mims about was the TV deal that the NWA, mostly Billy Corgan, had just struck with the CW network. And then they had their Samhain pay-per-view the very next day, and something happened on the pay-per-view.
Yeah. And there was a spot where they had, I've only seen clips because I hadn't had a chance to watch the whole pay-per-view, but there was a segment on the pay-per-view where they were James Mitchell and all these people were partying, and it was like supposed to be like they were doing cocaine. And from all the reports that I've seen, Billy Corgan pushed for that little segment to be on the pay-per-view. Well, word got back to the CW, and first I've heard that so because of that segment, they may not necessarily be on the CW as far as on cable TV. They may just be on the app. But there's also been rumors that the deal's just all the way off because of that segment. And there's also rumored of frustrations in the NWA over Billy Corgan's leadership.
And I haven't, I've seen the headline for that one. I haven't actually really read it, or watched the videos about it yet.
And granted, those are just rumors, but
yeah,
they said, especially after, the possibility of the TV deal falling through, there's maybe some frustrated athletes on the roster.
And a couple of days after all that happened, we get the headline: CW has also struck a deal with NXT.
Yep, 5-year deal starting in October of next year.
So, now granted, this isn't Vince McMahon WWE anymore. It's all under Endeavor. So there'll be people there who actually are not as stubborn, and they're not trying to say we're going to be the only thing in town. Well, that didn't work, and it caused a lot of people to, speaking of bad leadership, it caused a lot of people to resent Vince, because it was his little toy, a multi-billion-dollar and company toy, but still.
Yeah.
So under Vince, this would have been unheard of. Now under Endeavor, it's a lot more. Well, obviously, it is more than just feasible, because it's a done deal, and this isn't just something that Triple H and those in charge called up CW and said, "Hey, you know how the NWA, you're about ready to drop them off the network, possibly? Well, we have this other brand, NXT." So this had to have been in the works for a while.
See, that's what I'm thinking. And which makes me wonder if the cocaine segment on the pay-per-view, and this is just me speculating, but was that the excuse for the CW to halt talks with the NWA because they had already completed their deal with WWE having NXT come on? Because WWE is notorious for, like, if they're on a particular network, then part of their agreement with that network is no other wrestling show will be on their network, only WWE. They did that to, that's what messed up ECW's TV deal with TNN back in the day when WWE decided to go to TNN, signed a 5-year deal. And so all that time and resource went to WWE, and ECW ended up with no TV deal because WWE was like, well, if we're coming to your network, then we're the only wrestling show on your network.
Maybe. Like I said, I mean, this isn't the Vince McMahon WWE. This is
No, I mean it's
Endeavor.
not, but yeah.
So I mean, we'll
Um,
see. I mean, CW, because we were talking about this before we started recording. CW are they're trying to transition into being a lot more sports.
yep,
So maybe CW, the CW network, stands for Championship Wrestling.
possibly. I mean,
You know,
they tried to make a deal with Tony Khan recently to get Ring of Honor television on the CW. Tony Khan didn't really entertain any offers because he doesn't want to, um, for what I understand, he doesn't want to secure any ROH TV rights until he's got everything nailed down with AEW's TV rights, because that's, those negotiations are coming up soon. And so he wants to get all that nailed down to see where AEW is going to be. That way he'll know how to position Ring of Honor.
either way, it seems like we've kind of come really full circle from
hmm
the mid '80s when it was WWF against the NWA,
hmm
and yeah, of course, the NWA it was more Jim Crockett Promotions, but they were still
Yeah.
against the NWA,
Yeah.
and so now we've come all the way back to that, which I'm like, huh, this is deja vu all over again.
Yeah. It really is.
um, and we were also just mentioning how the CW network they're going away from the superhero shows, which I'm like, you know what, people like superhero shows,
Yeah. But
and
they canceled all of their superhero shows and wanting to get more sports programming on their network. I mean, which is fine, but it's like, my question is, where does this leave the NWA? If NXT
right,
has signed, and I mean, it's done. Shawn Michaels even put a tweet out because he's running NXT now. So he put a tweet out talking about, you know, 2024 NXT will be on the CW. Um, and so where's that leave the NWA? Are they still going to give the NWA a TV spot, or is it going to be just on the app, or are they just not going to have any working relationship with NWA at all?
you know, and I was sitting there thinking about any other like sports leagues that might be competing with each other, you know, the at the highest level, and actually you really don't have that normally.
hmm
Um, because with the exception of the times when you've had the XFL or the
Yeah.
USFL,
Yeah.
but I I can't recall a network only having the NFL and not one of the other ones, if that makes
Yep.
sense.
hmm
So uh, to me, I mean, if CW can get all of them, and I think that gets them more visibility.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm all for them getting as much wrestling as they can get. Because if I can
Uh,
get more wrestling in one place, I'm all for it. But um, I just wonder, since they caught the bigger fish, what happens with the NWA.
Now I'm kind of wondering, will Big Strong Mims go to WWE? Because I'd like to see that. Tell the truth, just because he's a friend of ours, and we want to see him do really well.
Oh yeah.
But one of the things that actually kind of surprises me though about Billy Corgan, not just greenlighting the segment, but actually kind of really pushing the segment with the cocaine. Do you remember it was around 96, late 96, early 97 time frame when I believe it was his drummer or the touring keyboard player actually died of a drug overdose?
Yep.
And then I think the guitarist, Jimmy Iha, he was also messing with drugs, and Corgan kind of gave him an ultimatum.
Yeah.
Because he said, we can't, we just lost our friend and our bandmate.
Yeah.
And so that's another, I'm really surprised that he would do that.
Yeah, me too. And I mean, unless that's just something somebody came up with, but in like every report that I've read so far, and from reputable sources, it's saying that the segment was his idea and he really pushed for that segment to be on the pay-per-view, probably assuming that it was on pay-per-view, so it wouldn't affect their TV deal, because he may have figured that maybe they weren't going to see it since it's going to be on pay-per-view. They can't do that kind of thing on YouTube because of YouTube guidelines, and YouTube is, worldwide and doesn't take much to find something on YouTube. So maybe thinking it was on the pay-per-view that prying eyes, so to speak, wouldn't see it.
I'd still watch pay-per-views.
And
that's even a line that Attitude Era WWE, and then when WCW was trying to mimic the Attitude, even they didn't cross the line into doing illicit substances.
Nope.
So it's like, well, good job, Billy. You just crossed a line that nobody's crossed before in wrestling.
No, and the company that WWE and WCW stole the Attitude idea from was ECW. And they never crossed that line. Then if anybody was going to have the freedom to cross that line, it'd be ECW, because before they got the TV deal on TNN, if you didn't go to a live show or catch it in syndication at 3:00 in the morning, like I used to back in the day, then you weren't seeing ECW on TV. So they could have done whatever they wanted to do. And they never crossed that line.
And, I think the closest they came to it was probably Sandman.
Yeah, it's probably the most. And like the weed references for RVD. It's as close as they got,
Yeah, and they never actually had him, though, smoking a doobie on TV.
Yeah, he didn't come out smoking a joint on television. You had the Sandman drinking his beer, but I mean, they sold beer at the concession stand, so it wasn't.
He's drinking a beer, smoking a cigarette.
Exactly.
Yeah, but that was
he was basically doing what people in the audience were doing. So
yeah, and you know what? The cigarette, it kind of makes me wonder, because later on, when like smoking laws became a lot stricter as far as like public buildings, even then he couldn't, unless they wanted to pay a hefty fine every time he lit up on the way to the ring. So because remember, at the time, I was a smoker, and so I knew all about those laws. It's like, now you got to go outside. Now you got to, go 5 miles away from the building, and away from the entrance. But which is not a bad thing. I haven't smoked now in 7 years. Which is kind of hard to believe, because Dwayne can tell you, me, like, when we graduated high school and all the way through my time in the Air Force, with the exception of about a 2-year span where I actually did quit. And then I went to Afghanistan and started back up again while I was there, for, reasons. And then I finally quit again 7 years ago, and I have not picked one up since, so, and I'll just tell everybody, don't start smoking. Trust me, it's not worth it, because you end up, and now it's like $7 a pack, and I'm like, oh Like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
yeah. But anyway, so I really hope the NWA can recover from this. Because I mean, it's put. I mean, they were all of a sudden they were in the headlines for a good
Yeah.
reason,
And
and
now,
immediately,
yeah. I'm hoping it was just, I'm hoping one mistake does not sink them, as a company. I hope they don't become like nobody wants to touch, no network wants to touch them because of that one particular, you know, mess up, so to speak.
unfortunately, I can see. Well, not every network saying this, but I can see some of them saying as long as Corgan is the one because he's the one that greenlighted this.
Yeah.
Of course, there's the really the bad thing about it was Billy Corgan's the one who put them back in the national spotlight,
Hmm.
and now all of a sudden,
Yeah. I mean, Billy
phew,
Corgan, he owns the company, he's in charge of creative, and that would put them in a terrible bind if a network was like, well, yeah, we'll take you on, but he can't be involved.
right?
But
Um,
without, the problem is without Billy Corgan, there's no NWA because he literally owns the company. He bought it
right.
and brought it back from obscurity. I mean, the NWA was like, remember when Shane Douglas threw the title down after
Mm-hmm.
he won the tournament? He beat Two Cold Scorpio, won the tournament, and then gave that famous promo, threw the belt down, declared the Eastern Championship Wrestling
Yep.
Championship, the Extreme Championship Wrestling World Championship, and then I mean you had NWA champions after that. I mean Steve Corino was an NWA World Champion. Adam Pearce, who is the general manager on Monday Night Raw, he is I think 5-time NWA World Champion. Uh, Colt Cabana has been NWA World Champion.
Dan
Uh,
Severn.
Dan the Beast Severn. But it was like, but the NWA was more of it was just an indie thing. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't, it didn't have the prestige or the reputation that it did before the split, before, the split and the creation of WCW. Billy Corgan was able to get them back in the national spotlight. You know, he worked hard. He went in and bought the company, retooled a lot of things, gave it that old school feel that we grew up on. Uh, and really brought it back into the spotlight. And I would, I hope it stays there. I would,
Mm-hmm.
we have friends that work there.
We do.
We, and I just, I hate to see any wrestling promotion lose its way because, you know, there's so many wrestlers that need somewhere to ply their trade. Everybody can't go to WWE. Everybody can't go to AEW. It's, there has to be other places that people have to go. And the NWA is a great place to go. It's quality wrestling in the NWA. So I'm hoping they can still salvage this deal with the CW. And I hope the CW is not like, oh, well, we've got WWE, so we don't need you anymore. I hope they try to scoop as much wrestling as they can for their network.
And hopefully they'll say, okay, we don't want 3 hour shows.
Yeah.
We may go
Yeah.
two at the most, but we don't want 3 hour
Yeah.
shows because after a while, it's just too much, especially, for some of us who are old and can't stay up past like 10:30. you
And the
know,
thing is, you get a 3 hour show. You've seen this with Raw for however long it's been a 3 hour show. It seems like 50 years, but it just drags after a while
mm-hmm.
because there's only so much you can put in there on a week to week basis on a 3 hour wrestling show before you just have to have filler stuff just to fill up time.
And they have a lot of filler stuff.
Yeah, and WCW did the same thing. They
Mm-hmm.
took Nitro to 3 hours to, and the same thing. a lot of filler, and there's no need for a 3 hour wrestling show. I mean, NXT is 2 hours. I think that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
SmackDown is 2 hours.
Yep.
You got 2 hours. You got Dynamite at 2 hours. Collision on Saturday is 2 hours, I believe. 2 hours is all you need for a wrestling show.
Yeah. The Rampage is only an hour.
Yeah, Rampage. Yeah, Rampage is only an hour. And let me see. Impact is a 2 hour show. That's all you need. You don't need a long 3 hour TV show. Wherever Monday Night Raw goes, because Raw's leaving USA
It's
too.
even USA. Yep.
SmackDown's going to USA. That's gonna so you SmackDown in essence will become the flagship show because they will be on USA Network while NXT goes to the CW. And where's Raw going?
They haven't said what Raw's going yet, have they?
I know. Nope, they haven't said yet. I don't know if any. I don't know what networks are in talks to get it, but I can guarantee they're not going to keep it at 3 hours.
Now I'm kind of wondering, is it going to go to NBC because of Peacock?
See, NBC is in the running for it. I know Amazon has shown interest in it. And as a Amazon Prime customer, I have Prime Video, and I would be quite pleased to see Monday Night Raw on Amazon Prime on Prime Video. Um, but I don't know. And a lot of the reason you've got NXT and Raw leaving USA is because they simply wanted too much for the TV rights. And USA is just like, no, we'll go get SmackDown from Fox, but then you can figure out where these other two shows are going because this is where we're going to put our money. Because consistently, SmackDown has been the better show.
Yeah. Because they don't, well, for the most part, there was that SmackDown, I want to say about a year and a half ago, where I texted you and said, 2 hour show, they had 13 minutes total of actual wrestling.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Okay, I don't care if you call yourself professional wrestling, sports entertainment, whatever. You're still a wrestling show. So wrestling needs to be the focus, not the little backstage skits. I know you got to have your interview segments to further storylines and all that stuff, but there needs to be wrestling because that's what people tune in to see. That's what people pay to see in a live attendance. Let people wrestle. There's too many talented people on these shows not to be out there wrestling.
You know, one thing, and I'll say this about any show, and it's something I forgot to bring up when we were doing our review of Crown Jewel. I know Piper's Pit was popular. I know the Flower Shop, which replaced Piper's Pit, temporarily. People like the Snake Pit, the Barbershop, all those. I personally am not necessarily a fan of them because they take too long.
Yeah, they take too long. It's very formulaic. You know you're going to get the same thing every time there's one of these segments. And it's like, I don't care, like you said, I don't care if it was Edge's, the Cutting Edge, Miz TV, Jericho's little segment, the Kevin Owens show, or like you said, the classics like Piper's Pit, the Snake Pit, the Barbershop.
The Flair for the Gold, I think that was the name of his.
Flair for the Gold. Shawn Michaels had one early in his singles career called the Heartbreak Hotel.
That's right. Yep. That one.
And it's like, no. The only fond memory that I have of any of those little talk show segments or whatever in wrestling is Shawn throwing Marty through the window in the barbershop. And I did. Now I take it back. There was parts of Paul Bearer's funeral parlor
Yep.
that I did like, where Jake put the Undertaker's hand in the coffin and locked it,
and he was dragging it,
and he was dragging it along, or where the Undertaker was choking Hogan Piper and Savage were hitting the Undertaker with chairs, and he was no selling all of it. And those two parts, but those talk shows as a whole, no, they could go away and never come back, and it would not phase me a bit.
And and when they have to stop what they're doing in the ring, they have to bring everybody in to set it up in the ring. That makes it even worse because that's what it was with the Miz and the Miz TV. And who was it that came down because he had a local celebrity from Saudi. He was a
Yes,
comedian,
yeah,
and
and then Grayson Waller
Grayson
came
Waller, that's
down.
what it was.
Yeah, and
And
it
then they
was
had,
like that's 15 or 20 minutes. You could have had a match in that spot.
yeah. I'm like, well, that's 15, 20 minutes. I'm not going to get back.
Yeah, there was wrestlers sitting at the States who didn't get picked to take the trip to Saudi that could have had that spot
Yep.
that Miz TV took up. MVP had a talk show segment too. I forgot about that one.
Yep. And well, we know MVP. He's not going to Saudi anytime soon. So
But no, MVP is
no.
not going to Saudi. But it's just I feel like, especially in this day and age, I feel like they're just unnecessary.
Yeah.
A lot the older ones, the classics, I get that because you know,
Well, they were new at the time. Piper's Pit
they were
was
new
new.
at the time. Wrestling was in syndication. You didn't have Monday Night Raw. You didn't have Nitro. You had primetime wrestling on the weekends on USA Network. You got a Saturday night's main event every quarter. So it's like, I get those because you've got to further your storylines. And if people aren't seeing this stuff happen on TV, everybody that's not going to the house shows are not going to know what's going on unless
Right.
you build these rivalries on these talk shows. And I get that. But after that, it's like they were not necessary anymore because between live TV shows every week, the rise of the internet, none of those talk shows are redundant. They're not
So
telling us anything that we can't find out for ourselves, or that they just couldn't just put the wrestling angle in the ring and let them wrestle and tell the story.
yes. I mean, and I know back in the day they used those. They would push for like Roddy Piper cracking Jimmy Snuka in the head with a coconut.
Yeah.
That what I mean is what really started.
Yeah, it started their feud. So without that catalyst, there's no Piper Jimmy Snuka feud,
Right.
which was hot.
It was it was extremely hot.
It was hot, made a lot of money, but if it hadn't been for Piper's Pit in that segment, none of that would have happened.
Right. So that's really the effective way of using those.
Mm-hmm.
And, Sean throwing Marty, well, Marty tried to run through the window, but Sean just kind of helped him.
He was scared of Sean, tried to get away. But
yeah. So Sean helped him through the window.
Exactly.
That, pushed that feud. But other times, like I still remember when the barbershop and Brutus had Legion of Doom on there. And it was just a normal interview. And then he handed Hawk like a hairbrush. He's like, "Oh, what a brush." And he threw it. And they didn't look impressed, and he threw the brush, and I was like, I don't think that was planned, but he did figure out the whole water brush thing. But that didn't do anything for anybody. It just took up time that they could have showed a match.
And honestly, it's like they were trying to I felt like I remember that segment, and it felt like they were trying to make the Road Warriors look dumb.
Right. And
they were trying to make them into the cartoony characters that, they had done with everybody else, and it's like that was never going to work with Road Warriors.
Mm-mm. And so those talk show segments, let's just no,
just do away.
I mean,
if you've got nothing else to do with the Miz, have him be an ambassador for the company and do things like that. But the Miz TV, I mean, they used Miz TV to try to push Miz in a feud with Gunther. He's going to lose. Nobody believes that Miz is going to be the one to beat the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion of all time. They're not. Anybody who thinks that the Miz is the one,
the longest single reign.
yeah,
The
longest single
Miz,
reign.
oddly enough, the Miz actually has
Yeah,
the longest cumulative.
that is true,
But
but it took him 8 times.
it took him 8 times to do
It took
it.
him
But
8 times to get it done.
yeah,
Took Gunther one reign, and he's still going.
and he's still going, and he's still chopping fools, and just
still power bombing people,
and that's not even. I mean, I couldn't tell you what his actual finishing move is because he could just
he switches it.
he switches it. He can beat you like with just about anything.
Exactly. He is an old school style wrestler. Because remember back in the day when we were watching, Memphis and Mid South and Jim Crockett promotions, they didn't use the same finish. It's not like today where what's going to 9 times out of 10, what somebody's going to use to end a match. They have a specific finisher, and that's what they're going to use every time. Back in the day, you'd see somebody use, somebody who normally didn't use a submission, but use a submission hold to end a match. Or they'd use a different move than you would normally see them do to get the pin. So I like the fact that he switches it up and doesn't always use the exact same move every time.
I remember watching a couple years ago, I was pulling up some of the old Mid-Atlantic stuff on the network, and it was a match with Wahoo McDaniel against, some jobber, carpenter guy. And he just basically beat the guy up and he just pinned him. I mean, he didn't because and they had finishing moves, but they didn't always use them in those matches.
Well, you look at Arn, especially when he was in the Horsemen, he used the DDT. He used the Gourd Buster. I've seen him win matches with the Spine Buster.
Yep.
Especially when he was wrestling enhancement talent. He would win a match with a Spine Buster. Him and Tully would do the double Gourd Buster.
Yes.
Or, Tully would do the slingshot suplex. And then the other guy would get tagged in and catch a DDT, and that was it. But they switched it all up.
And by the way, Arn invented the Spine Buster. He invented the Gourd Buster. The Gourd Buster, if people don't know what it is, you pick the person up for a vertical suplex and you get them up, and then you drop them straight back down on their face.
Yep, plant them on their face.
And he stopped in his podcast. He actually talked about the reason he stopped doing it is because guys were a little afraid of it because it was too fast for them really to protect themselves. And they're going face first into the canvas, and from a good distance, from whatever height Arn is. And, but we would see that, and now they got to do their moves on TV. They got to get all their moves in, which I'm like, save something for the pay-per-view.
Yeah, it's like I enjoy the fast pace of wrestling now. I still like the old school stuff too. But I do enjoy the faster pace because of just the amazing athletes that are out there, and they're able to do things that I've never seen done before. But I'm like you. It's like, slow down a little bit, save some of what you've got for the big shows. You don't have to pull everything out on TV every week. And then if you do that, and what have you got left for the pay-per-view?
A prime example, if you ever saw Ric Flair wrestle, like a normal TV, because occasionally he would, he wouldn't do everything because Ric Flair, his move set was just unbelievable. He didn't do drop kicks. I mean, he even said he might be able to do a running drop kick, but I mean, he was, because I saw one of the few times, when he would do his little flippity flip over the corner, and he actually landed on the apron, went to the other corner, came up off the top rope with like a double axe handle, the little double chop thing, and pinned the guy. Yeah. And, of course, if you saw the Flair on TV, he didn't use as many moves, and he might get him with the figure four. He didn't that match, but he might get him with the figure four. If it's enhancement talent, they're going to submit to the figure four. And this is before tapping out. So I'm like, we just have to trust the ref to actually, was making the right call there. But then when you saw Flair like in a high profile pay-per-view, look at his match against Harley at Starrcade '83. Look at his, and that was, he was still relatively young then too.
Yeah.
You know, look at what he did against Nikita Koloff. Look what he did against, even when he was a heel. Look what he did against Dusty. I mean, he was pulling moves out left and right. And then years later, against
look at the stuff he pulled out against Ricky Steamboat.
Yes, you know, then what he pulled out against Shawn when he was advanced age. I mean, he says, I just had to chop a knee drop and a woo. He had a little bit more than that.
No,
I mean, he threw he did a flying body press off the top rope, and his flying body press is ugly. Don't get me wrong; it is one of the most sloppiest looking moves, but he hit it.
Well,
and
it's sloppy because he never hit it. I mean, that was the one he hit on Shawn was probably, you could count on one hand how many of those he ever actually connected with.
Shawn, Harley, and that's the only ones I can think of right now.
Yeah.
But when they're on TV, I mean, and that's a different mindset now, is they just feel like they have to get all their moves in. It's like, you only have, 5 to 7 minutes out of here.
Yeah.
That's, you don't have to get all your moves in.
And I can see if it's a guy who's not normally on TV and he's got to go out there, here, we're going to give you 8 or 9 minutes. Go show us what you got. Then by all means, get all your stuff out there, because you don't know when the next time you're going to be on TV or if you're going to get booked on a pay-per-view. That's understandable. But guys like the Bucks, Kenny Omega, and the Lucha Brothers, and guys like that, we know they're getting booked on pay-per-views. We know they're getting booked in high-profile matches. So you don't have to give everything away for free. That is something that I don't agree with Eric Bischoff on much as far as wrestling goes, but I do agree on that. It's kind of like that. It's like that Joker quote in The Dark Knight. It's like, if you're good at something, never do it for free. And if you're doing it on live TV, you're giving it away for free when people could be paying however much for the pay-per-view and watch you do it there.
Right. And
I'm not saying go out and phone it in, but don't use every move you've ever learned on a TV match when you need to build toward the big pay-per-view match.
Yes. Where you're going to be expected to pull even more moves, because we would expect your opponent has actually done their homework and scouted you.
Exactly.
So,
and you expect that intensity level to be raised on the pay-per-view.
Yep.
So it's like, you got to bring your A game on the pay-per-view. So save something for that show.
And for everybody listening, especially Billy Corgan's listening, we know people who know Billy Corgan. We want him on the show. We do. I mean, we know at least 2 people. Actually, we know 3 people. Because our friend Big Mama, she's actually doing some appearances for NWA. So we're very glad to see that, because she has worked her rear end off to get to where she's at. She's she can explain better about wrestling than the majority of people in wrestling, because I mean, she knows quite a bit. And I love talking to her about this. She definitely gets it. And and she actually handles a lot of the stuff for the NWF, like booking. And I'm trying to at a couple of the events coming up, I'm trying to get a merchandise table set up so I can sell some stuff for our friend at House of Plastic. I'm trying to work at this so I can sell some stuff for him, like wrestling figures, and maybe get some armchair booking shirts to, some other merch to sell as well. And they've actually, she said, they gave me the green light. They're like, just, hopefully you have your own table. And, so I'm trying to get a hold of her now to find out, okay, what time do I need to be there and things like that. So,
right. Yeah.
Cause I got logistics to plan out. But when we're talking about all the TV shows, and we don't like, you and I both agree, we don't like the interview things, like the talk shows, the Piper's Pit, but now, you have Miz TV, and I'm pretty sure there was some other ones. And also, the more you have these stupid contract signings, it's no longer special, because nobody's going to sign a contract. Somebody's going to get hit with a chair. It's wasting time. And plus, they do everything in the ring now. So
Yeah. And look, I'm the last time that I actually saw an interesting contract signing was um, back in 2001. It was Triple H and Steve Austin. Vince McMahon had said that because they had been feuding forever, and Vince McMahon said, they were going to have this match at No Way Out that year. Stipulation was if they touched each other, if they got into any physical altercation before that match, Steve Austin would not get his WrestleMania title match, and Triple H would be suspended for 6 months. So when they had the contract signing for the match, Steve Austin signed his contract. Triple H signed the contract. Then when Austin was walking off, he hit Austin in the back with a briefcase and then hit him with a pedigree. And then Vince McMahon's like, "You've been suspended for 6 months." And Triple H is like, "I haven't been suspended from anything because I never signed." He signed at the bottom of the page. He never signed on the line where he was supposed
ooh,
to. So he got his shot in on Austin, then signed the contract, and then Austin couldn't retaliate. That was interesting. That was a good little swerve. But nowadays, you have a contract signing, you talk back and forth, somebody gets put through the table, there's a big brawl. It's like it's predictable. It happens every single time. And like you said, it just takes the special, you know, takes that importance out of it because it's like, and really it takes the logic out of it. And it's like, because we know contracts have already been signed backstage.
yeah.
We in the office. We know they're not signing legitimate contracts in the middle of the ring. So it's like, what is the point of having those when everybody knows? We all know how contracts work. The
Hmm.
only people that don't know how contracts work are little kids. But it ain't little kids that are watching this week in and week out and paying attention to what's going on. So those spots get on my nerves. I'm tired of people getting put through the announce table. That's gotten old.
Every single pay-per-view, most of the Raws and or
Oh,
SmackDowns.
yeah, somebody's getting power bombed or taking a crossroads or somebody's jumping on, off something onto somebody through the announce table. It's just, it gets boring after a while. And it's like, can we do something else? There's other things that can be done.
And you know, I need to actually buy some more shares in like T was WWE stock, now it's TKO stock,
Hmm.
just so I can go, hey, I'm a stockholder. Can I see your
Yeah.
expense reports? Because I'm curious to know your budget for one, trombones, because of
Yeah.
Xavier, you know, guitars when Elias was,
Yep.
still there. And then
Tables,
the tables.
the ladders, and the announce
Yes.
tables.
The announce table, and not only the announce tables, but all the monitors that are,
Yeah,
those,
they get tossed around every time they clear the table off. Yeah.
yeah, and they got like iPads that they're using. I'm like, the things are not cheap, you know.
Speaking of stockholders, Vince McMahon is going to be selling 8 million shares of his TKO stock.
All right, let me mark that down. I may have to go check that out. Be a fire sale. Actually, actually, you know what? Let me go look and see what the price for TKO is right now. Oh, come on now.
But I've seen that on several different news outlets throughout the day on Twitter that he's going to be as he's selling 8 million shares.
TKO Group Holdings. The price right now is $80.35. Um, dividend yield is 0.57%, which I'm assuming they're still selling, 10 cents a stock, for their dividend, which is actually not bad, but now the percentage is garbage, but um and let me see, that's just for today. It actually dropped. Okay, earlier it was 85. Ooh, it dropped 5% like after hours. me see. So from 115 down to 80, the analyst ratings are saying 90% of them are saying buy, 10% are saying hold. I don't know how old those ratings are. So yeah, so Vince, if you want to, sell me, is it like common stock or preferred stock, or did they say?
That they didn't say.
Okay, I'm going to guess I'm guessing they could always convert it into, his preferred stock into common stock.
Mhm.
Yeah, because they're trying to take Vince out of, power. And the man's in his mid-70s. Time to retire. Go swim in your pool every day.
Exactly. Here's the thing. I think they're just forcing his hand because, the people in charge of, you know, TKO have said that basically, to paraphrase, Vince is bringing unwanted attention to, you know, this merger because of all the skeletons in the closet that he had that are coming out, that have come out, hush money payments and all this type of
Mm-hmm.
thing. And I feel like they're just distancing themselves. I still feel like Vince thought, I'm going to sell the company to Endeavor because I've been friends with the CEO for 20 years. That way I'll be back in full control of WWE and everything can go back to how I want it. But then the company sold, and then he gets removed from creative. He basically has no power. So it's like your plan backfired. And it's like now they're like, well, we've got your company. So now we're going to put you out to pasture.
Yep. Now that the honeymoon phase is over, now we've
Yep. The
all had all the
honeymoon phase
briefings.
over. Yeah.
Okay.
The
Hey
ink's
Vince.
dried on those contracts and everything's ironclad. Now we're going to push you out the door because we don't need you now. We just needed you to get the company.
Yeah, they just wanted the company
Yeah, they
because
didn't want Vince. They just wanted the company.
because they knew Vince should have retired a long time ago because
Yeah.
a lot of reasons. And so now Vince is going to be done with that. Well, like you said, all the negative attention kind of comes full circle to what Billy Corgan has done right now with NWA.
Mm-hmm.
All of a
Yep.
sudden, now I think with Billy Corgan, this is, as far as I know, it's a one-time incident. Even though there is grumblings that people
And
are getting irritated at him, but those are rumors.
yeah,
We don't know.
and I can only speculate, but he probably thought the segment fit the vibe of the pay-per-view and, all that. And like I said, he probably did not think that the right eyes were ever going to see it because it was on pay-per-view and not on their weekly YouTube show, things like that. But it's like if a company's interested in obtaining your services, they're going to make sure to do their due diligence and they're going to watch your product to make sure it falls in their specific guidelines.
Yep. Yeah, should have realized that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, oh well. I mean, we'll guess we'll kind of see how it all plays out.
Yeah.
And we'll see how some of the because besides, I mean, that was a huge bit of news, all about the TV
Yeah.
deals. But besides that, I'm trying to think of anything else that may be going on.
No, not really. There's a lot of people that's still holding out hope that CM Punk's going to show up at Survivor Series. I hope he doesn't. I'm at the point where I'm tired of CM Punk, and I think he just needs to retire and go do something else. It's like it's at the point where he's just poison to whatever
Yep.
locker room he's in.
And I know a lot of people will defend CM Punk till the day they die, or the day he dies, till
Hmm.
the day everybody dies. But you got to look at his actions. When he spoke out of turn at a press conference.
Hmm.
I mean, just bashing the execs at a press conference.
Yeah.
With his boss right there
Yeah.
sitting 10 feet away from him. and then gets into a physical altercation with the same guys. Now, they were also in the wrong for the physical altercation. I am not defending them at all, because I also feel like if you're an exec in a wrestling company, you should not be in the ring either.
Yeah, it's like I was glad when Tony Khan took the booking power away from the EVPs, because yeah, that's just a conflict of interest, and that's
Mm-hmm.
just a disaster waiting to happen when your executives are wrestling and booking the shows.
And they're booking themselves to be title holders,
Yeah,
because that
yeah,
will, for no good reason other than we're the ones in charge, we're going to put the titles on us.
yeah. You see how that's been done in the past. Flair did it when he was a booker. Dusty was notorious for doing it when he
Yeah,
was a
Dusty
booker.
was absolutely notorious for that.
You know, Kevin Nash was a booker. That's why the Goldberg streak ended. Kevin Nash booked himself to be world champion. It's you can't have active competitors booking the shows. It's it's a recipe for disaster. It's
Or
just never going to work good.
you can have them, kind of give their input. They should
Yeah,
never, ever hold a title, at least not the top titles.
no.
Mid-tier title, maybe,
Maybe
but
I'm of the belief that if you are those lines shouldn't there should be a those lines shouldn't be crossed. If you're an entering competitor, then that's what you are.
Mhm.
You don't hold a position backstage. If you hold a position backstage, if you're an executive, if you're on the booking committee, if you're on the writing team, whatever, then that's your job, and you don't compete in the ring. I don't think the two should ever mix, because that's just bad business.
And before, if somebody says we're just slamming AEW for that, no. Like you mentioned,
No,
Dusty Rhodes did it in Crockett. But one of the worst examples I've ever seen of this was the Royal Rumble in, 2015, 2016, whenever Roman was a world champion and they said he's going to defend his world title in the Royal Rumble.
yeah,
Triple H was number 30.
yeah. And Triple H was an active executive
Yeah.
in the company and was booked to win the world title
Yeah. I mean, he
and
was
and
what the
carry it all the way to WrestleMania. He was
um the COO
COO, Chief Operating
operations. Yeah.
Office, yeah, officer, yeah.
I mean, and that is a real, like,
That's a
legally binding
yeah,
position. I
and
mean,
he was also in charge of talent relations. He
and
had that job because he took over from John Laurinaitis.
that's true. Also known as,
Clown shoes.
there you go. Um, one of these days he may actually call us up and say, "Hey, can I be in your show?"
Sure, clown
So,
shoes. Come on.
clown shoes, come on, you got your shoes with you? Yeah, yeah. We know how, the two young ladies who you said, "Oh, they're hot." Oh, look at their
Yeah,
mom. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it's not a
It's
good look
like
there, John. But
yeah, and it's like, and every company's done it. Yeah, we're not just bad mouthing AEW. They're just the most recent of a long line of wrestling companies that have allowed in-ring talent to book themselves as the top star in the company. And it's been done in WWE, AWA. Um, you know, Jerry Lawler did it in Memphis. It's just
Jerry Lawler did in Memphis like 200 times. He was the
exactly. I mean, Jerry Lawler still holds the record for the most championships of a professional wrestler in history. I think it's 137 or something like that.
yeah.
It's like, come on. I mean, you basically owned the territory and booked yourself to be the top star all the time. So it's like it's easy to win that many titles when you're doing the booking. Jeff Jarrett was another one
Mm-hmm.
when with TNA booked himself to be the world champion multiple times.
Yeah. Speaking of TNA, they're TNA again.
Yes, they are.
So who honestly, it's been also the joke. Who actually stopped calling them TNA?
um, I'd say Impact Wrestling sometime. Like if we were talking
Right.
on the podcast about the show, because I use the official name, but it's always been
Yeah.
TNA Wrestling for me.
Yeah. Total
It's never
nonstop action.
exactly.
And speaking of initials, when you say TKO, when every time we say TKO, I think of the Breaking movies.
Yeah, yeah,
Turbo Kelly, Ozone.
yep,
So
yep.
I just figured because I watched both of those like recently, and my wife and my kids had never seen those, and they watched them. We watched them both because somehow my wife got me Breaking Two, Electric
Electric
Boogaloo,
Boogaloo.
on DVD, and I was like, well, we can't watch number two until we watch
Yeah,
the first one.
yeah, you got to experience the first one. Okay, for me, what did your family think of those?
Uh, they didn't love them. I mean, they were fun movies. I mean, that's what it is. And Avery
Hmm.
said they're fun movies. They're fun to watch. They're goofy. Um, and then I also was like, yeah, both movies actually are from 1983, 84.
Hmm.
Um, which says something. I mean, they both movies hit the theater in the same calendar year.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
if that tells you how fast they pushed the production of part two, Electric Boogaloo.
Well, I mean, both movies probably cost about $100 to make. So, I mean,
And part of that was, the records that Ice-T, that they broke in
yeah,
the second
uh-huh.
one.
Yep.
Which when we watched that one, by the way, the DVD for part two, Electric Boogaloo, when you put the DVD in the player, it just starts the movie. It doesn't even have a menu. So that tells you how cheap that DVD
Yeah, yeah.
was.
Oh yeah.
But she got it for me at like Dollar Tree. So
Well, yeah, yeah. So I
so there
mean,
you go.
for a
Um,
buck, you can't beat it. But
yeah, exactly. But we watched it, and then of course, we're laughing. Do you remember the part in part two? Spoiler alert for those who have not seen them. Um, when Turbo goes falling down the stairs,
hmm, yeah,
and then it was very obviously a stunt man,
yes,
because the
yep,
guy, he was like a foot taller than
yeah.
than Michael
And they did,
Chambers,
yeah,
the
and
guy
they
who
didn't
plays
even try to
Turbo.
hide it. It was
Yeah,
just like,
it was bad. Um, but yeah, so yeah, breaking. In fact, I thought I saw. I thought it was like sitting here beside me in my big mess that I had beside me that I'm not going to bring the camera over to see. Um, but but yeah, that's all about TKOs. Every time I say TKO, I'm thinking, you have them and you have Electro Rock. So that's what
yeah,
we need now is Electro Rock to come in.
yeah.
Um, but anyway, back to wrestling. But yeah, CM Punk, I'd be glad when he finally says, you know what, I'm done. But I'm pretty sure he won't because he likes the spotlight, he likes the attention. Triple H actually said it because everybody talks about the pipe bomb promo.
Hmm.
Well, Triple H's response to that when he called him out. He did this,
Oh
10
yeah,
years ago, however long
yeah.
ago it was, when he said you only like it when CM Punk is the one
That's on top.
on
Yeah.
top.
He's like, you always talk about wanting to be a catalyst for change, but you only want change as long as you're the one on top. If you're not on top, then you don't care anything about change. And he's proven that to be true.
Mm-hmm. And so CM Punk, I mean, he's kind of like a child at times. I mean, his in ring stuff, especially when we did the watch along the match in him and Cena. I
Hmm.
mean, it was a phenomenal match.
Oh yeah, I mean,
But
at one time he legitimately was one of the best wrestlers in the world. He had everything: the in-ring skills, the presence,
mm-hmm.
the mic, absolutely the mic skills. You know, he had everything. I just feel like his ego got in the way.
Yep.
And, but then, he comes back after 7 years and it was obvious that some people can do that. Some athletes can do that and take a lay off. I mean, Shawn Michaels did it for almost 5 years and then wrestled another 8 or 9 afterwards. CM Punk's not that kind of wrestler though. His body couldn't hold up. And it's a different style and different styles of wrestlers now than there was when he left the business back in 2014. You know,
Yep.
the type of wrestling that guys like him and Daniel and Brian Danielson were pushing for in WWE is commonplace now, but Punk couldn't keep up. You stayed away for 7 years. You come back, those guys have passed you by.
Uh, yeah. So, well, this has been, another great episode.
Yep.
I want to give some more shout outs though, because if you didn't get a chance to listen to Wrestling with the Truth with, BC Hunter, he had a little bit of a layoff. I mean, he was gone, he didn't do a show for like a month or so.
Mm.
But he came back with a vengeance because he had Ted, the Hillbilly Hill on there, and he had the guys from Jaded, I think it's Jaded Pro Wrestling. Let me verify that. Because one of the things, and I should have mentioned this before we started recording, but Ted, he is trending number one in Antarctica.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we know this. Um, and what Jaded Pro Wrestling, um, they are actually trending number one in Greenland.
Okay. All right.
So we need to actually kind of look around to see, maybe we're trending number one somewhere.
We might be.
Might be. I mean, because we did crack the top, actually the top 100 for wrestling podcasts at one point.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it was Will and Taylor from Jaded Wrestling, and that was another excellent episode, by the way. But so Ted's number one in Antarctica. Jaded Wrestling is number one in Greenland. I might have to look and see. Maybe we do have a presence somewhere. Actually, you know what? We do have a little bit of an audience in India.
We do. We really do.
We really do. So, and also I want to say hi to everybody because I've noticed that we have this every episode. We have an audience in Nebraska. We have an audience in Washington State. We do have an audience in Tennessee. Definitely have an audience in Buffalo, New York, and that's our guys with Finisher Wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And also we have an audience in Maryland. Say hello, Kyle.
Yep.
And so we're just glad. I always say this, and it kind of sounds sappy, but I mean, I do love being part of this big podcasting family. If I had another one, Austin Boyer with Wrestling World. He's another one. I haven't mentioned it very often, but he actually just started a YouTube channel. So,
okay.
Yep. So if you get a chance, go subscribe to that one. He actually sent me an IM the other day. He said, "Hey, here's my new YouTube channel." So I went in there and I subscribed to it. So I should probably share this at some point. In fact, we should probably have Austin on the show at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Seems like he's a pretty good dude. And also the Dad World Order. There's some other guys that they haven't put out anything a little bit, but I know those guys. I mean, they're always working. Of course, they're the Dad World Order, so their families do come first.
Oh yeah. I've seen some. They put out some YouTube stuff I've seen, but yeah, it's been a little bit though.
A little bit since they had one of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of live, there's a very, very good possibility that here in the near future, we could actually have some live streams ourselves. And what we do, because I've actually been talking with Justin from TNC Sports Talk, and that's what he does. Which, by the way, his surgery went well. By the way, yeah, he hit me up, and I said, "Hey, how's it going?" And he said, "He's he's hurting, but he's getting by." He said it went smooth. So, but he showed me some things the other day on how to set up StreamYard and how to do the lives. And so look for us to possibly be doing lives. We'll announce it beforehand so that way everybody would have a chance to actually go on if anybody wanted to interact with us, because there is there's the chat feature, and so the comments will pop up. Now the comments, when they would come in, I would see them. In fact, I would also, the goal is to actually set it so Joel and I both could see them before they really popped up. And so if for example, if we had people like spamming, and by the way, we would not tolerate people being, I'll just say, rude with other people in the comments.
Yep.
So because I've actually seen that on other shows, who do lives. Yeah, all of a sudden you'll see people fighting in the comments, and I'm like, all right, both of y'all get out.
Nah.
This is our party. We don't want fights. Get out.
Yeah. Bye.
But yeah, there's a very, very good possibility we may be doing some lives. It may end up being a hybrid. We don't know yet. Because that's one of the things Dwayne and I was looking at is always looking for ways to improve, always,
Mm-hmm.
so we don't stagnate, so we don't become complacent. And we believe with that with our other personal podcast with
Yep.
Dwaylen is intellectual rock star. Because, by the way, if y'all didn't know it, he put out an episode yesterday, and
Mm-hmm. Yep.
all about I had no idea Batman and Flash actually somehow merged and became the Red Death.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I was like, I was actually listening to that after I dropped my wife off at work. I put that in. I was in the car, and then I almost had to start laughing because I heard, "All right, Steve, yeah, listen, I got hold of the guy." And I was sitting there trying to turn onto a road, and I'm trying not to laugh while I'm driving. But well, so you have the Intellectual Rockstar, and you also have my show, the Cubicle Chat podcast, which I do have some other changes happening with that one as well. So, but I'll talk more about those on that show. Um, so yeah, definitely check out all our shows. The best things anybody can do for us though is go give us some reviews, give us some ratings.
Yep.
Especially if you give us a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or any of the other ones which allow you to do that, we will read them on air.
Yep.
So you do that, and that really, really helps us out because somehow it helps with the algorithm. Give us ratings, that gets it noticed. That means more people will listen, and hopefully, the content that we're putting out is good content. So, so we really appreciate every single person who listens to us, especially if you give us a 5-star rating. We'll really appreciate you then. So, but my friend, I don't really have anything else. Well, I do have something else that's not wrestling related. In today, as we're recording, it's November 9th. In 2 days, it's going to be November 11th. And if you know anything about history, it's this today. It's for America, it's Veterans Day. For a lot of the other countries, it's Remembrance Day because it's talking about the 11th hour, the 11th day of the 11th month. And so, if you have family here, if you are a veteran, if you have family who are veterans, in fact, of course, I am a veteran. I did 20 years in the Air Force. Our friend Kyle is also a veteran. He did 4 years in the Air Force. That's where I met our friend Alan. One of mine and Dwaylen's best friends from high school. He also did 21 years in the Air Force. Dwaylen would have been in the Air Force, but unfortunately, his body decided otherwise.
Yeah, my back decided, nah. You thought, but no.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure if Dwaylen would have won the Air Force, he probably would have been a career guy, just like me and Alan, because it's like, what are you gonna do? Hang out in Hopkinsville? No.
No.
So, yeah, it's not a. Yeah, no offense to anybody still living in Hoptown. My mom still lives in Hoptown. Your mom still live in Hoptown?
Yep.
Yeah. So our moms.
All my family's in Hopkinsville.
Yeah. So, but yeah, definitely, say hello to your veterans. And just like yesterday, I mean, this was a total surprise. My family and I, we were in the local Mexican restaurant here in town, which, by the way, if you ever go to Mount Over, Ohio, go to El Camino Real. It is a Mexican restaurant, and oh my God, they are amazing. It is the best restaurant in this area, period. Not just Mexican restaurant, the best restaurant, period. It's one of our favorites. But while we're there, my wife actually asked for the bill, because we were getting ready to leave. Food was excellent as always. And our waiter, he told us, he said, somebody already picked up your tab. We're like, what? And we're like, well, who was it? And he finally said, okay. He pointed, it was actually somebody sitting like across the way from us. And he, and so I actually walked up to the guy and I said, thank you very much. I mean, that was very nice of you. He said, yeah. He said, I just want to thank you for your service. And then because I have, what, I don't usually have I don't show the hat on here, but this is usually the hat that I'm wearing. I wear it all the wrestling shows, but I just wear it when I'm out. But see, it says Afghanistan veteran, and he saw that, and he decided he wanted to pay for my meal, probably because it's Veterans Day coming up. It's definitely not something I ask for. The only time I ever ask for, like, if there's a military discount, it's got to be a very, very high bill. Like I just, paid to have like a new transmission on a car or something like that, or when I had, my septic tank, pumped out. You're talking like a couple $1,000s. And I go, do you do any kind of discount? Then, but if it's going to like Golden Corral, no, I'm not gonna. I'll pay the $8 or $9, whatever it is. I'm not one of those who constantly looking for, oh, you do military discount? Because what I've noticed is, unfortunately, a lot of the people who are always asking for that discount, they didn't know a whole lot when they were in uniform.
Yeah.
They did like the bare minimum, but they're the first in line to get the free food. So you will not see me at any of the restaurants that offer free food for free meals for veterans this Saturday. I just won't do it because unfortunately they don't verify people who are veterans. And so you have a lot of people who are just in line,
Yeah.
claiming, and I'm telling you now, I mean, it's almost feel like it's a gang. I mean, you go around claiming.
Yeah.
So, but that's all really I have to say about that. So happy Veterans Day to all the veterans out there, including myself. I mean, then I will include myself. Did 20 years, 1 month, 19 days. So yeah, I think I qualify a little bit. So
just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Don't know what we have on the gamut for Monday yet because, well, the weekend's still to come, and we don't know what could happen on SmackDown, and we don't know. They may come in the news and go, the NWA, they just definitely screwed the pooch on every single one of their deals.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, kids of all ages, don't be showing somebody sniffing cocaine on your show, even if it is a pay-per-view. That's just bad.
Yeah.
So
just not a good look at all.
Not a good look. So, but until we can talk again, my friend, good night and God bless.
God bless.